Over 15,000 blog posts dedicated to a single online game. Can you imagine that? I'm looking at the archive of Eveoganda right now, and honestly, I don't know whether to be more impressed or intimidated.
It's a lot, right? There's something about that kind of dedication, though. To keep at it for over a decade makes you wonder, what keeps someone going like that?
Exactly. What's the story they're trying to tell? Luckily, we've got our expert here today who, I'm convinced, can make sense of anything.
Well, I don't know about anything, but give me enough raw data, and I can usually find a pattern or two, and hopefully give you all a sense of what we're dealing with.
That's the plan for this deep dive. We're trying to understand the author behind Eveoganda, Eveoganda, and what we can learn from this massive, massive blog. So, first impressions. What do we make of the name Eveoganda?
Well, EVE's obvious. EVE Online, the game. But Oganda, that's the head-scratcher, isn't it? Feels intentional, like a statement.
Right. It's like propaganda, but for EVE. Like he's got an agenda.
Could be. Or it's a play on how seriously EVE players take the game. It's a notoriously intense world.
No kidding. And this guy's been documenting it, or at least his version of it since, get this, at least 2010.
Wow. Think about how different the internet was back then. Social media was just getting started. Blogging was king. Even EVE Online itself was practically a baby.
Wild, right? And through it all, Eveoganda has just kept going. I was scrolling through the titles. So many are directly related to EVE. 15,000, probably marking that milestone post. A rare look.
Who?
Mysterious. And a bunch mentioning how long he's been playing. 16 years. Stay Frosty. 16 years. Part 2. Even one just called 16 Years of Eve Online.
He's really intertwined with this game, isn't he? Like, the relationship he's tracking, ups, downs, the whole deal.
Okay. So if Eveoganda is like a map of Rick Javics's brain, what are the big, obvious landmarks we're seeing?
Imagine one of those word clouds. The bigger the word, the more it appears, right? In Eveoganda, lots of PvP, history, CCP, and before anyone asks, that's Crowd Control Productions, the company that makes EVE Online.
Good call. Wouldn't want to leave our listeners behind in the dust.
Right. So CCP, huge. Then opinion, art, community, and Stay Frosty is all over the place.
That seems significant.
Definitely seems like a theme, if not a life motto.
It's like he's giving us the ingredients, but it's up to us to bake the cake.
I like that.
All right, so before we go any further, we got to define PvP for those who might not live and breathe online gaming. What is it, and why is it such a big deal in Eveoganda, at least from what we can see?
PvP, it means player versus player. And in EVE Online, it's the heart of the game. Forget fighting computer characters. EVE is about massive space battles with real people, hundreds, sometimes thousands of players, all duking it out.
With real-world consequences, right?
Yeah.
Like if your stuff gets blown up, it's gone.
Gone. Big risk, big reward. It gets intense.
And Rick Javics seems to live for that. Based on this blog, he analyzes it, strategizes. It's clearly a huge part of his EVE experience.
Yeah, you can tell from the posts, he really digs into it.
And it's not just the action. We see history popping up too, suggesting a broader view. Like, he's into how EVE Online has changed over time, the forces shaping its world. And CCP, well, that implies he's watching the developers like a hawk.
He's holding them accountable, making sure they're doing right by the game, by the players.
And then we have opinion, art, community. Suddenly it's bigger than just spaceships, isn't it?
Way bigger. It's like he sees EVE Online as this whole culture with its own politics, art forms, everything. It's almost as if he's saying this virtual world reflects our own in a lot of ways, which, honestly, when you think about it...
Hold that thought. We're going to get philosophical in a bit. But before we do, let's circle back to Rick Javics, the person. Posts like Crossroad or Eve had other ideas. Those feel different, more personal somehow.
Oh, definitely. Like we're getting a peek behind the curtain of the game. Into his life.
Behind the curtain. I like that. Because in a way, that's what these more personal posts feel like, right? Like, we're not just talking about game mechanics anymore. We're seeing how EVE Online, for Rick Javics, intersects with real life.
It's like those moments when, something happens in a game and it makes you think about something going on in your own life. Except he's actually writing about it.
And he's doing it for over a decade. It's pretty amazing. When you think about it.
It is. It's like this weird, unintentional autobiography.
So walk me through some of these personal posts. What's an example of this intersection between EVE life and real life?
Well, there's one, Crossroad, where he talks about this big decision his corporation had to make.
Corporation. Sorry, got to jump in. For those who don't speak EVE, what does that even mean?
Right. So corporations are like these player-run groups, kind of like guilds if you're more into fantasy games.
Gotcha. Okay, so his corporation had a tough choice to make.
Yeah, some kind of alliance thing. Two bad options, lots at stake. And as he's writing about it, he's also dealing with this career dilemma. Doesn't say what it is, but you can tell it's weighing on him.
And he's finding parallels between leading this virtual group and whatever's happening in his real life.
Totally. And it's not just Crossroad. There's another post, Eve had other ideas, where he's talking about this elaborate plan that went totally sideways.
Ah, those best laid plans. Evie's notorious for that, right?
The worst, or, the best, depending on how much you enjoy chaos. But yeah, his point is, it reminded him that even when you think you've got it all figured out, life or EVE can throw a wrench in the works.
Stay adaptable.
Right. Which,
Stay frosty.
Exactly. See, it's not just about the game, right? It's a whole philosophy.
Totally. Okay, but it's not all strategy guides and personal musings. We see posts like Hell's Vacation. What's going on with those? Is that where his inner novelist comes out?
Kinda, yeah. Hell's Vacation, it's a short story. It's still set in the EVE universe, but it's fictional. Like, he's created these characters and this whole narrative, and it's really good.
Wow, okay, didn't see that coming. So he's got range.
He does. And what's cool is, even though it's fiction, it still explores themes he's always writing about. Like, what does it mean to exist in this world? What choices matter? That kind of thing. But through these characters, it hits differently.
More emotional.
Yeah. Like, in the game, you lose a ship. That's pixels. But in his story, you feel it.
Interesting. So we've got battle reports, we've got personal reflections, we've got fiction. It's all over the place, genre-wise, but also over a decade of content. Is there any rhyme or reason to how it's all organized? Or is it just like a fire hose of information?
Honestly, I was expecting chaos, but it's surprisingly organized.
Really? Color me impressed.
The blog itself is chronological. Like, each year has its own section. Then within that, posts are by month, so you can literally track his EVE online journey year by year, month by month.
So it's like digital archaeology. You can literally see what he was thinking about in EVE and in life, going back years.
It's kind of beautiful in a way.
A little creepy, maybe, if you think about it too hard.
Maybe, but also really useful, because on top of that, he's got his tags. Remember how we were talking about PvP and all that?
Yeah, like a million tags.
Basically. Yeah. But they're not just for show, they're like filters. So let's say you only care about the space battles, the PvP stuff. You can filter by that tag and bam, just those posts.
Okay, that's actually genius. Out of control, but genius.
Right, it's structure within the chaos. Which makes me think he wants people to read this thing, to engage with it.
Which brings up the question, why? Why should anyone, especially those of us who aren't EVE online fanatics, care about this blog?
That's the funny thing. It's so much more than just a game blog. Yeah, EVE is the hook, but you get sucked in by the human element.
So what? It's like a study in obsession, a cautionary tale.
Not necessarily, though there's an argument to be made for both. But it's more about how we connect online, how these virtual worlds become, well, real. At least they matter to the people in them. And Eveoganda, it gives you a front row seat to that. All the drama, the friendships, the rivalries.
And you're seeing it all through the eyes of someone who's been there for years, actually since almost the beginning.
Exactly. So you're not just learning about EVE, you're learning about the evolution of a community, how it's changed, what stayed the same.
It'd be like if, the first cave paintings also included a Twitter feed. You see the evolution of communication alongside the art.
That's strangely accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's history, but personal. And there's something really powerful about that.
So to bring it all home for our listeners, what's the one thing you'd want them to remember about Eveoganda?
That even in the most unexpected corners of the internet, even in a blog about a space game with, 15,000 posts?
Don't remind me.
Right. Even there, you can find genuine human connection. And that's worth paying attention to.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think we've done our deep dive for the day. We'll let someone else tackle those 15,000 posts.
Hear, hear.
But seriously, if any of this sparked your curiosity, even a little, go check out Eveoganda. You might be surprised what you discover.
Definitely worth a look.
Until next time, happy digging, everyone.